Hello, hello. Welcome to the Five Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. I interview the top commercial real estate investors and industry experts so you can learn from their experiences. So if you're an investor, a high W-2 earner, or real estate or tech sales professional that wants to invest in real estate without having to manage properties or leave your day job, then this podcast is for you. Or if you're already investing in real estate, but you're doing it part-time and you want to become a full-time multifamily or full-time commercial real estate investor, this podcast is for you too. You're going to learn a ton. You will learn from real-life multifamily investors and other professionals in the industry. They're going to share their blueprints for success, and I'm super excited that you're here. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, hello. This is Abel Pacheco, your host for the Five Talents Podcast. We are super excited today to have an amazing guest, Mr. Brian Burke. Brian, thank you very much for joining.
Abel, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, I was telling Brian, he's just one of those veteran, very tenured, verifiable track record kind of individuals that I'm just very excited to bring to our network and platform, because I know he's going to bring a lot of value for anybody that's, whether you're passively investing or a new general partner. There's going to be more than a few wisdom nuggets, insights, and things that Brian will help with. So I'm excited. For those that don't know Brian, probably not in commercial multifamily real estate for very long. You'll find out more about him as he gives his intro. But he's literally raised like over $100 million plus of investor capital to buy thousands of doors, 20, 30 years experience in the commercial space. So I don't want to cut, I don't want to do your injustice to your introduction. Tell us literally like who you are and what you do, and we'll just jump into a great conversation, Brian.
Yeah, well, I'm a full-time real estate investor, president and CEO of Praxis Capital. We're based out of California. I started out a lot like you, Abel. I was in the single family space for about 12 years before I started multifamily. I've been investing in real estate for 31 years, or 31 and a half now. So
nice.
About 18 years ago, I made my first multifamily investment through a 1031 exchange of some rental single families that I had. And that got me started on this whole multifamily journey, which, once I got into it, I never looked back. And been investing in multifamily ever since. We've managed to survive a couple market cycles and not lose any investor money. And, I think that's probably the best track record one could have. But, we're going on 730 real estate purchases to date now, maybe 740, and over 3,000 multifamily units. So it's been quite a career, and I just feel like I'm just getting started, man. I got a lot of years left.
All right. Well, that's great to hear, man. 730 times later.
That's
You're like
right.
just getting started and just heating up is a great spot to be in, my friend. Well, that's amazing. Yeah, the 12 years in real estate prior, I think I heard you on maybe a Whitney Sewell podcast where you talked about how you started in like literally nighttime, daytime, your day grind as a law enforcement officer. Thanks for your service there. And then, real estate on the side. And so your first investors were kind of like your police officers packing heat. So you had to make sure you returned capital. That's for sure.
Yeah, it really tells you it teaches you how to make sure you safeguard people's capital, because when your life is on the line, you're not going to do anything stupid to lose their money, because I knew I was a dead man if I did. So that kind of stuck with me ever since. And, I'm proud to say after 30 years in this business, I still haven't lost anybody's money. So knock on wood that doesn't change.
That's great. I have a feeling you've learned a few things along the way that have kept you very conservative and made the right moves and right decisions. And now, a lot of blessings to you and a lot of success coming your way. Continue to. So that's awesome, Brian.
Yeah, well, just a thing or two. Yeah, you learn stuff along the way, but I'll tell you, just as soon as you think you've seen it all or that you know everything, you see something you haven't seen or you learn something you didn't know. So it's always a learning journey.
Enter COVID, enter pandemic.
Yes,
there you
exactly.
Go, well, so, tell us maybe on that note, like what what happened this year for you? How did things change? How did things remain the same?
Well, things remain the same, is that, we've got several thousand units in our portfolio that we had to continue to manage through this pandemic. And we did a pretty decent job doing that, I'd like to think, and so I think that is what stayed the same. What changed for me is I did something I thought I would never do, but had been encouraged to do for many years, and that was to write a book. So I did that. I actually wrote it last year,
Awesome.
but it didn't get published until early this year, because I find out it takes 9 months to get all the way through the editing and publishing process after your manuscript is done. So launched a book this year, which is pretty exciting. So that's one thing that was new. And the other thing that was new this year is we raised a blind pool fund for multifamily. Launched a $50 million fund earlier this year, and we're almost full. So that was also pretty exciting. So it's been a pretty eventful year here, 2020.
$50 million. Is that it, Brian? Come
That's
on.
it. That's it. Yeah. Just 50 million, which, it's amazing that we could accomplish that. I mean, considering that, our largest raise prior to that was around 20 million. And I think last year we raised like, I don't know, 25 or 30 million last year, and maybe, 25 or 30 million the year before.
Mm-hmm.
So this year we'll have raised more money in a single year than we ever have, and more money in a single offering than we ever have, and did it all in the middle of a pandemic. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, that's kudos to you, because for, like you said, 20, 30 plus years, you've done all the hard work. You've, been persistent, determined. You follow the right steps, the right path. You probably learned more than a few things, like we talked about, and applied them over and over again. And now you're in a position to capitalize, at a spot where people are freaking out about market, global, issues, the economy. And, there's a lot of investors that, are kind of frightened as well, and got to figure out a safe place to put their money. And you kind of lined yourself well for the last 30 years to be the beneficiary and also the good steward of people's capital to go return it. So that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Well, it's all part of a long process, right? I mean, people think like, I want to get into multifamily, so I'm going to go find a deal, and then I'm going to go find investors, and everybody's going to want to invest in it. And quite frankly, it just doesn't work that way. The way it works is you build up a track record, you build up a reputation, you build up trust with people, and then that's what leads to investors. And then when you have the investors for a project, that's when it's time to go out and look for something to buy. So, they always say, what comes first, the deal or the money? And a lot of people will always say, oh, go find a deal and the money will come. And that's BS. The reality is you gotta be out there, looking for that cash a long time before you put your offer in. And when I say looking for the money, it doesn't mean that you're out, telling everybody, hey, invest with me, I got great deals. What it means is you're establishing yourself in the industry with a track record, with a footprint, with just an awareness of who you are and what you do, and that people come to learn about what you're doing, and trust that you're going to do it right. And that comes with, just maybe buying small deals and doing whatever it takes. So, raising a lot of money in a short period of time is really a long game, not a short game.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. It's the right mindset to have. And we're definitely in a long game. That's for sure. So the fact that you've been able to raise so much capital this year, just even this year, let's stay on it for a moment. What tactically, tactics and strategy, like how the heck did that happen in this year? What happened? Just maybe I don't have any clue on $50 million on the fund, man. Just break that down for a little bit for us.
Oh man, that's funny. Tactics and strategy. You flashed me back about 25 years when I was in field training, and my training officer, every time we'd get a call, like a burglar alarm call in the middle of the night, okay, think tactics and strategy. What are you going to do? Where are you going to park your car? Which way are you going to approach the building? You just brought back all these memories, Abel.
Yeah.
But that applies equally here, right? I mean, before you even get to the scene, you've got to be thinking about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And that really is our business was set up for this type of stuff. And when the foreclosure crisis hit back in 2009, remember that? When
Yes.
they were like foreclosures everywhere and all that stuff. Well, our business up to that point had been primarily one of buying properties at foreclosure auctions.
Mm-hmm.
And so our business was perfectly set up for that very event. And when that hit, we were totally ready. I mean, we had everything lined up to be able to really take advantage of the opportunities presented by what was happening in the economy at that moment. And, I'd like to think that, we're smart enough to always be prepared like that. Sometimes maybe it's just luck or accident or just circumstance, but same thing happened here when this pandemic struck. We were just ready to go. We had, all of our infrastructure was in place. We had been building trust with our investors for many years. The book came out and, of course that, brings people's awareness to what we're doing, whether it was intended for that or not. Just all of those things kind of fall into place. And so when you get to this, pandemic issue, people are trying to figure out an angle on how to take advantage of what opportunities are going to be presented or are being presented by that. And when they're ready for something like that, they reach out to people that they know are in the industry that they trust. Mm-hmm. And so we'd been spending years establishing that trust with our investors. And, when they wanted to take advantage of the opportunity in a greater way, we were at the top of mind for them and we were the ones they called. So that's really how it all kind of falls into place. I mean, I'll tell you what we're not doing. We're not doing any marketing. We don't have billboards. We're not doing commercials. We're not out there shouting, hey, we're raising money. None of that could be further from the truth. Really, it's just, we've been spending years building up that audience so we could send out one email and say, we got a fund that we're launching. There's a webinar we're going to do. You can come and watch if you want. And we told about it. And within 2 weeks, we'd raised 25 million bucks. Wow. So, that's how preparation, gets you ready for when the main event finally comes along.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber to Lucky is preparation and opportunity they meet, and definitely met for you in this time. So before I forget, your book, what is the name of the book and where can we get it? This sounds awesome. I think it's well timed here for us.
Yeah, the book is The Hands-Off Investor, and it's written for the passive investor, right? So somebody who wants to invest in a real estate syndication or fund that's managed by somebody else, that's making all the decisions. How does that investor first find those investments? And second, once they find them, how do they decide who to invest with and what to invest in? This book is designed to teach them those skills because that information isn't really out there. At the same time, for those who are raising money, it's a really interesting book because if you want to know what questions your investors are going to be asking you, you probably need to read this book because every question that they're going to ask you is in there because these are the questions for them to ask sponsors, right?
Yeah.
So this is like getting the answers to the test questions at the beginning of class. So the book is available on biggerpockets.com. It's biggerpockets.com/syndication book. It's also available on Amazon and in bookstores everywhere if you can find a bookstore that's open these days.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did something similar, not in 2019, but this year during COVID. I was like, well, I might as well put some thoughts down on it, and it doesn't have 30 years of experience, has my 12, and majority was, like I said, single family. We talked before, but I was like, well, what do I really feel like I know well? Well, it's like how I invested passively in my first 400 doors. I was in the limited partner passive investor and just kind of invested. And I go, well, these are the things that I thought about and I learned about. So I'm very happy to see, we got your experiences because they're probably going to be very thorough. And I'm excited to read that book. Sounds like a great one. Sounds like a great one for our listeners as well. Okay, well, this is awesome, Brian. So, okay, so you raised a ton of capital in a blind pool fund for a new, somebody that's newer to our world. Explain the difference of, buying a single property or maybe a portfolio and this blind pool fund, just so people, really understand.
Yeah, a single asset syndication is pretty well known out there. And so in a single asset syndication, you find a property, you know how much money you need to raise for it. You go out to your investors and you say, hey, we're raising $5 million to invest in Marvin Gardens Apartments in Las Vegas, Nevada. And everybody knows what they're investing in. They can see the pictures, they can see the financials. People can gain comfort in the deal because they know you as a sponsor, they trust you as a sponsor. Now they get to see the deal. They like they believe in the area, they like the property, the pictures look nice, etc. That's your typical garden variety single asset syndication, and it's the lifeblood of most syndication sponsors, and it was the way that we did all of ours up until more recently, about 3 years ago. And it's the right way for anybody that's just getting into the business as a sponsor to get started. That's a single asset syndication. The next kind of rung on the ladder is to do a multi-asset syndication. And we did a few of these over the last 3 years where we would acquire, 2 or 3 assets, and we would put those assets into one funding vehicle. So, it might be called a portfolio investment, or it might be called a fund, an identified asset fund, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of a hybrid approach between a single asset syndication and a blind pool fund. And what you're doing in this case is you're identifying the properties, you're showing them all the pictures, all the financials, and they make one investment and they own a piece of all of those properties. And then the next rung on the ladder is the blind pool fund. And the blind pool fund, what that means is that you raise the money first. You have no properties identified, or maybe you might have 1 or 2 that are identified. But generally speaking, you'll say that you don't have any. And you're just raising the money, and people are basically putting their blind trust into you that you're going to go out and buy the right assets in the right locations at the right time and implement the right business plan that's a fit for their investment objectives. So really, it's a very trust-based investment because they don't get to see what you're investing in ahead of time. But the advantage to the sponsor is now we have complete discretionary control over the money. We can go out and buy any asset that we think is the right fit for the fund, and we don't have to go out and subsequently raise money for that asset once we get it into contract like you normally would in a single asset syndication.
Yeah, got it. Well, that's good clarity. And so we're really, like you said, trust. We are going through these, people that we know, or organizations or teams like yours, where we say, they've got a great track record. And if I'm going to invest, into an entity, it would be this one, right? It'd be a great one to look at, and I'm going to trust that they're going to do everything, and trust that they manage it, and trust that they're going to choose the right deal. And then you return, whatever the return percentages are, and they win and you guys win, and kind of have a little more autonomy to make the decisions quickly, probably come in more aggressively. Well, I won't say aggressively, but the way you close can be more aggressive. Less time to close. I already have it. We know we're going to go in at, I don't know, the broker's offers and things like that. So, yeah.
Well, you get invited to conversations that you're not otherwise invited to take place in, and so
there's a good way. That's a good insight.
Yeah, when the seller and the seller's broker are deciding who's going to be in competition to acquire the asset, one of the questions they always will ask is, where is your equity coming from? And if your answer is, oh, we have a lot of investors and we'll go out to them and we'll raise the money, et cetera, that's fine, and it's very common. But let's say that you and I are both up in competition for the same asset, and you tell the broker, I'm going to go raise money from my clients, and I tell the broker I have the money in the bank account. Yeah. Which buyer is more likely to get awarded the deal?
Yeah, that's the way it goes. That's just real life. This is business.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense, and I like the way you put it. Though we get into different conversations we probably wouldn't have had before, or more invitations, more people seeking you out. Hey, this guy's just got a fund, Brian and his team, let's call them. And so the markets that you're in today, maybe this would be a good transition point. So love to hear this insight. I am a newer person trying to break into the world. A lot of people talk to me and ask me, like, how do I go do what you've done? You've done like 6 deals. I haven't done 730, but we've done 6, active deals, and they're trying to figure out how to get there. I think you're a perfect person to give that advice. Like, how do I get started to even get some attention from some brokers? And I love to hear, a little bit about, the way you do it, your markets and that kind of thing, or maybe project yourself back then is probably the right question. The right frame of mind.
The answer is real simple, and it's one that everybody can relate to and everybody should be familiar with. Let's say that you're sitting at home and you're trying to go somewhere. So the first thing you need to do is you need to try to figure out where it is you're going, right? Because if you don't have a destination in mind, you're just going to go out and bumble around and get lost.
Yes.
So you got to have a destination in mind. So let's say you know where you're going to go. The next thing you have to do is you have to put one foot in front of your other foot and start moving. And you want to head in that direction. And that's as simple as that. I mean, it sounds like ridiculously simple, but that really is as ridiculously simple as it is. The only reason I got to 700 and I think 730, 740, 750, I don't remember what I have it written down somewhere. But the only reason I got there is because I did one, and then I did another, and then I did another, and I did another. And, some might argue like, oh, these deals are too small, or you're wasting your time in single family, or why would you buy a duplex? You should just go straight to 100 units. Forget all of that. What you have to do is you have to do something, whatever that something is. You have to do something that you can actually accomplish, and use that as a stepping stone to the next thing that you can accomplish. And hopefully the next thing is a little bit closer to the destination you're trying to get to. So, when people say like a duplex is a waste of time or whatever, just go straight to 100 units. I would say to them, well, can you do 100 units right now with the resources you currently have? No.
Yeah, no.
So, okay. So that's like saying you're sitting in your living room and you want to go to the moon. Do you have a rocket? No. Okay. Well, maybe your destination, you got to think more about that. But where you're trying to go is you're trying to go across the state. Okay. Well, you can get across the state by, take a few steps, start walking, get to your car, get in your car, start driving, get to the airport, get on a plane. Okay. So every little step is one that leads to another. And you have to start with taking the step across the living room. And that might mean buying a single family home, buying a duplex. What you're doing by doing that is you're establishing a track record, you're establishing a presence, you're showing people this isn't your first time and that you know what you're doing. Because really, when you're buying a lot of deals and you get to the level where I'm at right now, it's a very capital intensive business. I mean, it takes millions and millions and millions of dollars to buy thousands and thousands of units. And the only way you get millions and millions of dollars is either you have them already, because you have a trust fund or whatever, your inheritance, whatever, good for you. But if you don't, and you have to get money from others, you have to realize that others are only going to part with their money and give it to you if they trust you. And they're only going to trust you if you can show them some reason why they should trust you. Now, originally, when you're first getting going, that reason might be that you share DNA. Might be a brother, sister, mother, father, some kind of relative, a good friend, somebody you went to school with. They trust you for one of those reasons. Maybe that's where you start. But then, you get to the next level where you can say, look, I've done 10 deals. So I did 10 single family houses. I bought them, fixed them up, resold them, made money on all of them. Now I'm going to do this 10-unit apartment complex. I need an investor. So then you do the 10-unit apartment complex. Then you say, look, I did this 10-unit apartment complex and these 10 single families. I'm going to go do a 25-unit, and I need 5 investors, and and that's how you get those 5. And then you build off the 20 to a 50-unit, and then you build it to a 100-unit. That's exactly how I did it. People wonder, like, well, how'd you get there? Well, I didn't just land here. It came from years and years of hard work doing deals that most people that are selling you a class on how to do this quickly would tell you is unnecessary. But I'm here to tell you it's the only way to get there.
Yeah. One step at a time, heading in the right direction. And your destination in mind is so powerful. The way you broke it down is very simplified. I think that's the right way to do it. Is you have to take the next best step, move in the direction that you want to head, and you got to be clear on your goals. Like, where do you want to end? If that's your end in mind, then what are all the tactics and strategies to get from here to there? That might just be getting up off the couch and walking down the living room, man. If that's the next step, then make it happen. Read a book, do a podcast, raise 20 grand to go do your first deal on a single family duplex or whatever it is, right?
Nothing is beneath you. I mean, just do whatever it is that you have to do to establish yourself in this business. It's always one thing leads to another in this business. It's never like you just land at the top. It doesn't happen that way.
Hello, hello. You're listening to the 5 Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you're serious about achieving financial freedom. Are you ready to create your own path through multifamily investing for yourself and your family? Then I know you're going to appreciate our Investor's Guide to Multifamily Investing. It's titled Tackling Commercial Real Estate the Easy Way. We use this guide to invest ourselves in $93 million worth of real estate. So we're going to show you the basic mechanics of multifamily syndications and how to evaluate your next passive investment opportunity. So the best part, if you subscribe to our podcast now, leave us a review and a rating. I'm going to give you a free copy of our ebook. So please take a moment to do that now. Once you've done that, go to 5tcre.com/ebook, 5tcre.com/ebook. Make sure to let us know you left a review and we're going to send you a free copy. So thank you so much for subscribing to the 5 Talents Podcast. We really appreciate it. Well, in this, maybe illuminate a little bit your path on maybe just dealing with people, partnerships. I'm not sure if you, without digging in, to so granular detail, but, did you do things on your own at first? Did you then team up with 2 or 3 people? Did you try different teams? And now you're with one team that you've done a lot of business with over and over again? Or how does, illuminate a little bit that journey for you over the years?
Yeah, my first couple deals I did completely on my own. And when I say on my own, I mean, I was like 20 years old. I didn't know anything, and I had read this book that said you can buy real estate with no money down. And I thought, oh, that sounds easy. It's just ask the seller to carry back the down payment. I'm like, I can ask that.
I could ask them.
Yeah. So I was too dumb to realize that most people will say no. So I asked somebody and they said yes. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how I got my first investment. Of course, after a while, you learn that that's an unusual answer. But that's okay. When you don't know any better, you just ask. Mm-hmm. And so I did. And then, going a little further down the road, I realized, I need to buy property at a discount. So I was looking at foreclosures. I'm like, nobody's going to sell me their house because I'm 22 and I look like I'm 15 and nobody's going to respect me. And so, I'd found partners that were older than me. That was my only criteria is, okay, they look older than me. So people will listen to them. Yeah, they'll trust them. They'll listen to them. And so I did a little bit of that with a couple different people, and it never really panned out to amount to much. So then I finally decided the only way I'm really going to be able to do this at any scale is if there's nobody to say no to me. So I decided that for me, foreclosure auctions was the way to go. And if I went to a foreclosure auction, if I was the highest bidder, it didn't matter if I looked like I was 15. I hand over a cashier's check as the highest bidder, and now I own the property, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop me. Mm-hmm. So that's the route I took. Now, of course, you have to have cash to do that, and I had no cash. So I literally applied for every credit card offer that came in the mail. I took all the credit cards down to the bank, and I handed them to the teller, and I said, cash advance them all to the limit. And they couldn't tell me no. So they did. They gave me a cashier's check. I took the cashier's check to the foreclosure auction, and I bought a house with it. And that's literally how it went. And so I was the Lone Ranger for years, and I did it all on my own and just kicking and scratching and getting signature lines of credit and however I could to cobble together enough money to be able to do it. And then when 08 happened, when we had this, this big foreclosure crisis, I'm like, man, there's just no way. This is going to be like drinking from a fire hose. There's no way I'm going to be able to do all this stuff on my own. So just by luck, I met a guy at the foreclosure auction that was there scoping it out. Turns out he was the largest home builder in the county. Wow. And the reason he was there is because he wasn't making any money building houses in this, foreclosure mess when you could buy a house for less than it costs to build it. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, we're trying to figure out this foreclosure thing because we can't make any money building houses. We might as well buy them and fix them up. He's like, but I can't figure out this whole process. It's so confusing to me. And I'm like, I've got this nailed. Let's team up. I'll do the buying. You do the fixing. Take your production home building company and make it into a home remodeling company. And that's exactly what we did. We said, let's give this a try. On the next 6 months, let's do 6 houses together and see if we work well together. So we're like, okay, so we kind of started out down that path. Well, that was our destination, right? Was 6 houses in 6 months. We did 60 in that first 6 months.
Wow.
And we realized, okay, we really have something here. And, he knew guys with money. So he brought some of them in to like fund what we were doing. And, that really kind of helped build the business and take it to the next level. And so that's, it's like sometimes you just need the right connection, the right partner, somebody that brings something you don't bring. And that was my mistake. Maybe it wasn't so much a mistake, but early on my career, my only criteria for a partner was they looked older than me. Now, I guess on one hand, you could say they brought something I didn't. They brought, a look of maturity, but they didn't bring they didn't bring money. They didn't bring a particular real estate skill or something that really would propel me to the next level. And that's what's really important is, don't find a duplicate of yourself as a partner. Find somebody that brings something you don't. And, the sum is, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, as they say.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And it makes a lot of sense. And again, preparation, opportunity, meet. I love the credit card story. I've heard it a number of times from some really highly successful people. And a lot of them all say, don't do that. And,
right.
and you're listening to it and I'm like, I did the same thing, man. I maxed out more than a few and put those down payments down and try to get it back and pay them all off as quickly as I could. But, I've heard that more than a few times.
It's enormously risky. I don't recommend it to anyone. I can't in good conscience say that you should go out and do that. But I will tell you, if I hadn't, I wouldn't be where I am today. And, when it works out, we can all joke about it and laugh. But, the reality is there's people out there who have also done that and it's buried themselves. I look at look, I got nothing to lose. I have nothing. I'm going nowhere. So, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to do it anyway. I could have spent the rest of my life just paying those credit cards off if it would have gone the wrong direction. It probably would have been the last real estate investment I ever made because I doubt my wife would have let me do that twice.
Yeah. There's a number of people that are probably exactly in that position. And those are some of the, the things that you think about when you're like, man, you put all this hard-earned money to work instead of trying to do it on your own. There's a hands-off investor way to do it. And syndication is extremely powerful. We're all leveraging, just like you are. I'm doing the same. I'm leveraging partners or people that I believe have more time, more knowledge, more expertise than I had coming in. And I'm trying to get the best of the best in my teams for the same reasons. It's, man, my hard-earned money, I want it to work well. And I'm trying to be a good steward of people's capital. So this is the best way that I could possibly imagine is try to put a great team together. So,
indeed.
Yeah, that sounds like you've done the same. And so then you did all these deals, when did multifamily specific syndication come in? Was that the 20 years ago or what the timeline in that?
Yeah, I didn't syndicate any multifamily until I guess, let's see, it's 2020 as we sit here recording this. We've only a couple days left in the year.
Yeah.
So let's see, I did my first multifamily syndication in 2008. So 12 years ago.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So prior to that, I was doing it on my own. And so
you were buying multifamily deals, just not syndicating.
That's right.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I always kind of believed in trying to do stuff that I hadn't done before, using my own resources to the extent that I could, and, prove out my concept before I went and raised money from investors. And so, back then I was, when I was buying all these foreclosures, sometimes I would keep one and then they would go up in value and I could sell that in a 1031 exchange, use the proceeds from that to buy the next thing, or maybe figure out a no down payment way to do it. Whatever it could be, I was trying all kinds of creative financing to do multifamily on my own before I went and did a syndication. And so, of course, they were smaller properties, 16 units, 11 units, stuff like that on the small side. My first syndication was a 60 unit. And so, it's all part of that growth pattern.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's good insight because anybody listening, whether you're a passive investor, just trying to learn more about the world, or if you're, first time, second time, third time general partner, that's really, trying to figure things out. There are a lot of insights that Brian talked about right now. Partnerships, the determination of years of experience just kind of starts at a, single step. I like the fact that you based a lot of your best practices on solid relationships. The way you develop trust for raising capital, private capital, was key. Is there, with the last few minutes, right? A lot of this stuff is mindset. Like, how in the world am I going to raise $50 million? How in the world, when last year I did only 25 million, now you want me to do 20 and a 50? It's just, the numbers are nutty to me. So how does somebody wrap their mind around being able to do this? Give us any kind of, the wisdom, your knowledge, and all the years of experience. You've dealt with a lot of different, lot of different looks. How does somebody mentally prepare just to, to kind of deal with this, the whole world?
Well, if you imagine, a child who's, only like 3 feet tall, looks up at an adult who's 6 feet tall and goes, "Oh my gosh, how do you get to be 6 feet tall?" But, eventually they're going to be 6 feet tall and they're not even going to really notice, right? Because,
Yeah.
they just grow incrementally over time. And that's the same way I grew my real estate business, is it just incrementally over time, where what I was doing always felt natural. It was always pushing the boundary a little bit of what we had done, but always the growth felt natural. We didn't go from like, oh, I raised 1 million to I raised 100 million, not at all like that. So it's all been like kind of incrementally. So this year when we raised our 50 million, we launched the fund as a $25 million fund. We had an option to double it if we chose. Well, when we raised the first 25 million in like the first like 2 weeks, it was like, okay, we're off to a good start. Of course, it's going to taper off now, but I think we probably can get all the way to 50. So we set an achievable goal. 25 million we felt was an achievable goal. We'd raised 18, 19 million in a fund just last year. And we raised over $20 million last year. So we, over 25 million last year. So we figured, raising 25 million in a fund was an achievable accomplishment. Now, it's of course a little more challenging because it's a blind pool and those are more difficult to raise for. But I still felt it was an achievable accomplishment. When we got there as quickly as we did, then it was like, okay, now we're going to pull open the stops and go all the way to 50. Again, that was kind of like an insurmountable, like, oh my gosh, are we going to get there? Well, the reality was I didn't care. If we didn't get there, it didn't matter. We'd raised 25 million. That was enough to go out and buy a couple properties this year. We could do another fund next year and raise another 25 next year. It doesn't matter. But if we get to 50, that's great. Well, what we found is that it really starts to taper off after that initial, rush. And, and like the next month we raised another like 7 or 8 million. And then the next month after that, it was like another 5. And the next month after that, it was like another 5. And so while we did the first, half of the fund in the first couple of weeks, we did the second half in like, I think 4 or 5 more months is what it took to get there. So, it's just a matter of just kind of staying with what you think is achievable and then seeing what you can accomplish.
Yeah, that's great. That's good stuff. Well, with the last few minutes here before we have to wrap up soon, what is the best place for any of our listeners, any of our viewers on YouTube or podcast listeners? Where can they reach out to you? What's the best place to get into your world, Brian?
Oh, there's lots of places. Probably one of the most common places is through biggerpockets.com. It's an online real estate question and answer forum that people go to. And I spend a lot of time on there, kind of answering people's questions on the forum. So you can find me there a lot. Certainly you can find us through our website. It's praxcap.com. That's praxcap.com. You can connect with me on Instagram at investor Brian Burke. You can check out the book at biggerpockets.com/syndication book or through Amazon. That's probably most of the best ways to reach out.
Okay. A few different ways. How long have you been contributing to Bigger Pockets?
I've been on there, gosh, it's been close to 10 years. I think it's about maybe 7 or 8 years. I mean, I think I remember when they reached a big milestone of 250,000 BP members. It was like this big thing. Now they're in the millions, right? And yeah, I've been around a while. I was on their third podcast episode, Bigger Pockets podcast number 3. I remember Brandon Turner, the host of the podcast now, he was the co-host at the time. He called me and he said, we're going to do this podcast. Would you like to be on it? And I said, what's a podcast?
What's a podcast?
Yeah. And so he's like, oh, it's this thing where we interview you. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it. I didn't know it was going to be the biggest real estate podcast in the country. And now I've been on there 4 times, and they have like 250,000 downloads every episode. It's been an incredible thing.
Yeah.
I've been around BP for quite a while.
No, that's awesome. I thought we were doing well on our new podcast. We launched it this year. We're probably at like 70 something episodes. We've been just trying to put them all out there, but we get about 300 downloads an episode, about 1,500 a week. And I go, man, 250 downloads, 250,000 each episode is amazing.
Can you imagine?
I mean, it's just nuts. Yeah. But I started, learning too on bigger pockets before. I'm trying to think of how actually I found it. It took me a real estate conference that I paid for, and I paid for training. I paid for education. I paid all this thousands of dollars, and they're giving me all these terms that I had never heard before. And I'm jotting them down like crazy. And this has already had like a portfolio, I don't know, 5 properties, right? Anyways, I was writing them all down, and I start to Google all these terms and look at them. And then the answers and the responses kept coming back to bigger pockets. And I was like, what is this forum? And that's how I found Bigger Pockets.
Me too.
Man, it's a good platform. A lot of people, use it as single family, but it's really expanded, I guess, here in the later years.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a powerhouse for sure. If you're not on that site, you should be.
Yeah. And so you have just been, like, when you say contributing, you can find me there. You are on there daily, weekly. At what portion of, success do you think you would contribute to you responding and answering questions and putting out content? Just maybe illuminate that. Why do you do that? Why is that?
I could probably trace back almost all of my success to that website when you really think about it. It's like, in fact, I was just talking about this earlier today with my senior VP of investor relations, because we were talking about, the process of raising this 50 million and, what was contributing to a lot of our inbound leads and that sort of thing. And, it's number one is people see something I wrote on Bigger Pockets, even if it's something I wrote. There was a response on a thread on a comment I made 4 years ago. There was a response last week. So the shelf life is incredibly long. I've been on there for a long time, so that's been a major contributor. People contact us because they read something that I wrote that they thought, you know what, that sounded like the right answer to me. That's who I want to invest with. Contributing led to me being on the podcast. The podcast led to even more awareness. That led to other podcasts. It was a conversation with Brandon from Bigger Pockets that led me to write the book that I wrote. And then the book has led to inbound leads, or maybe podcast invitations, or media attention, or whatever it's been. And so it's just kind of everything kind of grows, but a lot of it, if I trace the family tree back, there's no more than 6 degrees of separation between everything I've done and that website in the last 6 or 7 years, for sure.
Wow, what a testament, to a platform. It's an amazing platform, no doubt. But the platform in general, that was yours, and that's how you used it, and you just kept, continue to grow it, and it scales. It continues to give back. You feed into it. You're helping others. They learn. They get education, and at the same time, 4 years later, here's a response. Here's a potential investor, and you wrote that content once, or you wrote that piece once, and you may have responded a bunch of times, but that's pretty amazing. That's insane there to think about it. Well, is there anything, Brian, we didn't talk about today that you think would provide our listeners, our guests, a lot of value, or anything you wanted to highlight or bring exposure to? Anything I didn't ask about that you wanted to speak about?
I think the one thing I'd want to highlight, especially to people who are in the sponsor business, is always know that raising money is about trust, and you got to get people to first trust real estate, second, trust you, and third, trust the deal. And if you got to do it in that order, fail on any one of those 3 points, you're not raising $1 from them. So think about that when you're out there raising money. And when you hear the story about us and the success we've had raising this fund today, don't think that you just go out and start a fund and start raising money in a blind pool fund. Do yourself a favor, do the stepping stones, do deals that are within your means, do things that you can identify, the assets to your investors as you start to grow, and look at a fund as the end game, not a starting point. A lot of times I talk about funds. The next thing I know is everybody's going like, I'm going to go out and start a fund. And it's like, have you ever raised money before? No, but the fund is great. That's what I want. Please do not do that. I beg you, even more than I beg you not to go out and max out your credit cards. I beg you, don't go out and try to start a fund just yet. It all takes some time.
Yeah, it definitely does. It all builds on each other. It definitely is some stepping stones, and could definitely understand that. Well, with maybe a couple of minutes, I have heard you talk on, I forgot which podcast it was, but you talked about these 3 trust curves, right?
Yeah.
Trust you, trust real estate, trust the deal. I don't know, maybe elaborate a minute or two, because I don't want to let you go, man. This is an amazing conversation. And I'm actually probably going to have to ask you back at least once sometime in the future, but maybe elaborate a little bit on that, on those 3 trust curves. Like, if you can, that would be amazing.
They're vitally important, because without them, you completely fail to raise capital, and they have to be done in the right order. So the order is, first, the investor has to trust real estate. If somebody says to you, I'm not investing in real estate, then they're not going to write you a check, hands down. So we skip this entire step. When people come to us, they come to us because they want to invest in real estate. There's some people that go out there, they try to go to self-directed IRA seminars and tell people, this is why you should invest in real estate. There's tax benefits. There's this, there's that, there's the other thing. You're spending a lot of time convincing people that real estate is right for their portfolio. We skip that step completely and don't waste any time on it. It is. Yeah. Don't try to convert people. We skip that step completely. When they come to us, they already trust real estate. So that's trust curve number 1. Mm-hmm. If they don't, you're just talking to the wrong audience. Trust curve number 2, they have to trust you. If they like real estate, but they don't like you, they're not writing you a check. Bottom line, the story stops right there. So they got to trust you. And when trusting you means you got to have a track record. You got to have a reason for them to trust you. You got to be able to show them what you've done. You got to be able to have professional materials to offer them to look at, all those kinds of things. Trust curve number 3 is they have to trust the deal. If they like real estate and they like you, but you're buying a Class C property in Tumbleweed, Iowa, and they believe that market is going down the toilet, they're not going to write you a check. So they have to trust that the asset that you're acquiring is worthy of an investment. So you got to satisfy all 3 trust curves if you want to raise money, and that's how money is raised.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for your time today. Really appreciate everything that you shared with our listeners so far. It's been a great one. And again, my name is Abel Pacheco. I'm your host for the 5 Talents podcast. If there was something that provided you value today, which I know there was, I'm going to ask and request that you go to our podcast, leave us a written review, subscribe, and like us, so we can have more amazing guests like Brian in the future. And I don't know if we'll hit 250,000 downloads, but a couple 1,000 or so would be amazing. So we can have Brian back and say, hey, you did some damage. You brought some more listeners and more viewers. So come with it. I would appreciate it. Brian, again, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on, Abel. I appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the 5 Talents podcast with your host, myself, Abel Pacheco. Each week, we're going to bring you interviews from industry experts and commercial real estate investors who followed their dreams and achieved massive success. Before you leave, let me ask you a few questions. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you learn something valuable? Was your mind stretched to what's possible and what you can achieve? Do you want other experts just like the one you heard today? If you answered yes to any or all of those questions, then please take a moment to subscribe to the 5 Talents podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and most importantly, leave us a written review. Tell us what you liked, tell us your favorite guest, give us any feedback. I'm excited to learn and improve so you can get a more valuable show. So thank you again for subscribing to the 5 Talents podcast.